can we just get a confirmation in the chat that everybody can hear me okay? I just like to always double check that just to make sure. I'm getting a thumbs up from Steve. So Johanna in the chat, does it look good?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so this presentation is, what to do about turkey trots and other fall races. This is actually the only presentation I haven't totally been looking forward to, in part because I went to the Magic 8 Ball, I turned it over, and it said unclear. I flipped it over again, it said try again. So I may have to defer on the presentation until the Magic 8 Ball can give us more clarity on exactly what we should do with fall races. But in the meantime, I'll try the presentation as an alternative. So I'm Brian Jenkins. I've been with RunSignup for 7 years. I personally ran my first race in 1996 by faxing an entry fee and or faxing in a entry and mailing a check. So we have made quite a bit of progress since then. So now people can register like on their phone 10 minutes before the race, get their bib, go out and run, and get a text message of the result, as compared to maybe what my first race experience. I'm sure others have like worse. They actually send in stone tablets as their first entry fees. Okay, so today I've kind of had this turkey trot discussion with large events. So some of this may be overkill for some of your events, but I do think the concepts discussed here are very helpful for any scale events. So I think when we're looking at the fall right now, I think it's super important to start building out contingency plans. Simply put, an A plan, a B plan, a C plan. So an A plan would be you feel very confident with your current race being able to go live in person with limited to no interruptions. Maybe you have to do a couple waves or something like that, but it's relatively minor impact. A B plan would be, hey, half of or more of our participants are going to have to sign up virtually. A C plan is like, hey, our event is probably going fully virtual. So when I'm looking at those different plans, everybody's different. Like across the country, there's all sorts of different types of rules and regulations, what's allowed, what's not allowed. I don't think that there's any one true statement on that, but we're going to dig into that a little bit further as well. So doing a break-even analysis is super important. Communicating with your sponsors, coming up with a virtual strategy, and a plan for swag. So we're going to kind of drill into each one of these topics. So Johanna used our graphics from the turkey chops last year. I didn't even notice the bottom one where the turkeys are chasing the dog and the runner. I like that quite a bit. So I did not notice that the first time. My eyes only looked at the top one. So what to do? As I discussed kind of in the beginning, no one really knows what to do, but that absolutely does not mean do nothing. I can tell you right now, there's a whole lot of doing nothing going on. I think the people that are attending this obviously are not planning on doing nothing. They're trying to figure out what to do. So I talked a little bit about those A, B, and C plans. Make sure that you're preparing for that. So let's start looking at creating a contingency plan. So the plan B, and I think for a lot of our customers, this is going to be something that they're going to have as their primary option. So plan B, I expect to be quite a number of people offering this, which is you're going to have a live event and a virtual option. So you may have to have some sort of social distancing protocols with a reduced field. You may have to work with an event where you have tentative approval from your local permitting agency, and your sponsors or vendors or your beer gardens have a reduced or no capacity. And you also need to make sure you're communicating in a way that is supportive of participants who are not comfortable in a group yet. So plan C, for some of us, this is kind of the worst case scenario, which is virtual only. So you're still dealing with group size restrictions of say 50 or 100 or 200, where it's just improbable to be able to put on an event. Or there are certain parts of the country that have been communicated that they're not issuing any permits through all of 2020. That's not many places, but there are a few. Another thing that may cause you to go virtual is that when you have these discussions with sponsors, they're unable to make firm commitments, or you're getting feedback from your participants that they're not interested in participating. So I know there's been a lot of discussion about going virtual and what that means, but I am seeing pockets of events that are doing a great job going virtual and seeing increased numbers. I'm not saying that's the case with every single event. Some of it is somewhat of a fluke. I've just had different types of events that have seen increases in participants. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with viral or social marketing by those participants due to having just a great brand. That sometimes you just have a great brand by accident. So, you know, I've been working with CASA for many years, and we have a superhero brand. And superhero events can do quite well because people want to, you know, get a superhero shirt or you know, pretend to be a superhero for a day. So plan D. So this is kind of, if you don't like any of the options so far that you've seen, getting more creative. Many of the race directors that we work with, they got into this because they wanted to help a cause, or this is, they're trying to take a passion and turn it into a business. So make sure that you're applying that passion to some new ideas. Like the ideas that are presented are the ideas that are known. I can tell you that we all know that somebody's going to come up with something here for the fall that hasn't been discussed yet that might get 10,000 people. And what is that? I don't really know, but I think that you should allow yourself to use the whiteboard and scribble different ideas, like what stands out to you, and try that. Maybe, you know, survey participants, just get an idea of how people would respond. So we've talked a little bit about challenges. So a lot of people have seen some of the successes with challenges. We do have some events that have used RaceJoy. So you actually can set up a RaceJoy course in a park where people can go run an actual race, but they can do it anytime they want during a week or 2 weeks or a month. That's another option. And then fundraising only events. This typically means that the event has no entry fee, and so then they're upgrading to get a shirt or and then making donations or fundraising. So there are different options that you can consider, and you really want to take into account like your costs and how your participants might respond and things like that. And if you do work with a lot of events, make sure you explain to them that skipping a year is a big deal. It's not a little deal. So you don't want to, you know, skip a year if you can avoid it. Even doing a virtual event, if well done, can keep your name in front of participants, because you have to explain to them at that point you're taking a, you know, 32-month, 33-month break between events, and that's going to have an impact. What I have typically seen in events that have skipped a year is that they typically are unable to recover. So it takes a lot more effort to restart the engine than it does to keep it going. So one of the things that I've been walking people through is helping them start thinking about the whole idea of if you're going to put on an event, whether that's live, a live event, is how much revenue do you need to bring in from sponsors and registrations to cover the event. So I have races that are planning to go live, and they just need to make sure that if they get the response back from the governing body that says, hey, we'll let you do an event, but no more than 250 per hour. Well, you need to budget that out. Is that actually financially feasible for you to do? For some people, that truly is not, because, you know, hey, at 250 an hour, that means for a 1,000-person event, the start line, just the start line's open for 4 hours. The finish line's open for 5.5 hours for a 5K. You know, some of us can do that, but that's not even including things like, okay, what are my police costs? What are my road closing costs? Those types of things really need to be sketched out and well understood before you really press forward with a live event. And so that part sometimes gets swept under the carpet because we all actually want to put on a race because it's infinitely more simple, relatively speaking, to the logistics of shipping stuff and just, you know, we know that people aren't super excited about, or the percentage of people aren't super excited about virtual races, but you shouldn't be pressed into, hey, we have to put on a live event, and then you realize you're going to lose $50,000. So that can happen very quickly because the costs don't really scale down. So when we're looking at this break-even analysis, you know, do you have a firm understanding of what your new requirements are for permits? Do you have an understanding of increased costs? And one of the things that I have mentioned to many people is that I personally believe that in-person events should charge more for the fall, which is very counterintuitive, but there's going to be less races this fall. And I think you want to position yourself as a premium safety brand if you're putting on a live race. And you should charge what I call a safety fee. We actually have a function in RunSignup called extra fees. It was designed for, like, if a state park charges like a $5 admission fee or something like that, you could itemize that and charge that. But charging the safety fee is actually a marketing tool for you. So if you normally charge $25, I would charge $25 plus a $5 safety fee. And then also include that in your marketing and on your website, is that this is our safety fee and here is our plan. So you can actually take your plan that in runsignup.com/looking forward clearly explains our perspective on how you might put on a safe race. And during the pandemic, you certainly can take that, make it your own, and share it with others. You can even put that on your website, because the whole idea is that if you're going to do this, you're going to charge more and you're going to transparently show, I'm taking every step that I can to try to keep you safe, my volunteers safe, my sponsors safe, and it's a differentiator. So if you're looking at that and you are going to have increased costs, I would charge more. The other thing to consider is, do you have any reason to believe that you're going to be limited on the number of participants? What we are finding is that there are participants that do want to participate in live races. And the races so far have been, I would almost call them pop-up races. So they've had 10 days to 2 weeks from the time they've actually gotten approval from the place that they can put on the race to the time the actual race is happening. And as you all can imagine, you know, a lot of registrations are coming in like pretty late in the process, 3, 4, 5 days beforehand, which is a huge problem logistically when you're talking about ordering shirts and hats or gloves, whatever you're getting for people. You're going to have limited quantities on some of these things to limit costs. The next part is venues. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about, venues. We all work with different types of venues. Some parts of the country, it's in the Midwest, there's just so many parks and lakes where you can, go there and use their parks to put on races. In other parts of the country, parks are extremely difficult to get permits, and so you may be using public roads and things like that. Others are using, premium venues like concert venues or other things like that. Are they currently open for business? Can you get in contact with anyone that tells you, what they're doing or what they're going to require for you to do in terms of spacing and sanitation? And again, do they increase costs or limit numbers? One thing that I've had a bunch of discussions with, and this is just something for you guys to think about, is that I think the fall for some events in some parts of the country are going to be very difficult to get permits, primarily because these governing bodies are somewhat stuck in an impossible position. If they say yes to you, the concert says, why don't I get, that? If they say yes to you, the food festival says, why can't I get that? So be understanding of that like, if they say yes to you, even for a 100-person race, they can get bombarded with a bunch of other people. So they may not be saying no to be mean. They just may not want to open that box at this time. So something else to consider is, look at private parks, look at private speedways, places that have a lot of parking and a lot of space that are available on Saturday or Sunday morning. I used to recommend golf courses, but the pandemic has filled up golf courses again. But think in those manners, and there is a lot of private land in parts of the country where you can potentially put on a race, and they potentially could be a partner with you. You could do a 3-race series if you could use the same course and venue and same setup for maybe 3 Saturdays in a row. So, production costs. So what I try to help people understand, because a lot of races haven't done this in years and years, is like, what costs are fixed and what costs scale. Meaning, like, which costs go up with the number of participants, which costs are there no matter what happens with the number of participants that you have. So we just kind of gave you guys some examples of fixed costs So your permitting costs, signage, police, medical support, timing fees, liability insurance. Then the scaled costs are going to be your swag costs, although those could go up in cost because you have to order them later in the process than what you're comfortable with. Porta potties could be more expensive because you need to order more of them. Or you need to actually pay extra because they're affixing hand sanitizer to every single one of them. Snacks, likely they're going to be a little bit more expensive, although it depends on the event. If you know, a lot of people, and I think this is totally what I would do if I was in the situation, is prepackaged. So prepackaged little baggies that you can grab at the finish line and go. You know, race bibs, et cetera, those are all your scaled costs. So line item this stuff out, and then getting realistic budget numbers for 2020 is going to help you in the process of making decisions on how you're going to approach your event. Now, the interesting thing about some of this is that for certain costs, like if you have a really expensive venue, typically, you may be in an odd situation where your costs go down because they don't have anybody else that's booking. So that's something to consider is, you know, if the park that you normally work with says, yeah, this year it's going to be $10,000, and last year was $2,000, well, maybe shop around a little bit because I do think there are deals out there. The only thing that I can tell you is that I was working on a project for CASA, which I'm on the board for, and we were trying to do a Topgolf outing for this fall as a fundraiser. And they didn't move $1 off their price from March. I was kind of miffed by that, and now we're looking at something else. So here's some examples of increased fixed costs to have some discussions, and hopefully you guys in some of the breakout meetings that got more information from others about this is PPE for staff and volunteers. I've actually had a race that had their permit denied because they didn't feel like the volunteers were adequately protected in the plan that the race organizer presented. My general recommendation on volunteers for 2020 and until this kind of settles is try to have as few of volunteers as possible. I think that, you know, many races are going to find that volunteers are difficult to come by. And if volunteers are treated like food handling now has quite a bit of rules and regulations around it. You know, it would be best to try to find ways to, you know, eliminate volunteers. I know that in some of the races discussion groups, they were talking about the water monster as a water distribution mechanism. That's just an example of, like, instead of having volunteers handing out cups and, you know, putting out water, a water monster can potentially eliminate that. You know, using more signage and cones to mark courses versus, you know, obviously having volunteers at those places increases safety. You know, if someone's having an issue, there's a person there that can watch it, but it also just creates more issues for you. Some of the things that you guys will be well aware of is more hours spent for timing and spreading out starts. Those are going to be another, you know, cost that you're going to have to do. I've mentioned the porta potty ratio, significant amounts of hand sanitizer, and individually packaged water or snacks. So these are all things that may increase in cost. But for some events, you know, really, if they have huge post-race parties, they may be slightly, they may actually have slight savings on some of these things. So minimal viability, I am really trying to hammer this home, is, you know, do all the costs and then figure out, okay, how many registrations and what does sponsorship look like for what do we need just to break even? And it's not super complicated once you get all the numbers written down, but then you can kind of break that down to a per participant cost and make sure you understand what that's going to be for this year, because again, that may involve you actually increasing the cost of the event. I really don't think that you're going to get a lot of participants. If you're able to put on the event and it's $30 instead of $25 or $35 instead of $30, I think a lot of people will be okay with it if the race is going to happen. So communicating with sponsors. As someone who works on average about 6 hours a day on the phone, I would highly encourage you to call each sponsor. Do not email sponsors, and have a good conversation with them about their commitment to the event this year, their ability to financially support the event. And if they've typically attended the event, you know, ask them, are Are they willing to attend, or are their employees interested in attending the event? And then if they come back and say, yeah, we're interested in supporting you and we'd like to continue to be involved, now you have a discussion going, and you can kind of give them some of the options that you're considering, your A plan and your B plan and your C plan. They may be more confident with, let's say if your prime sponsor comes to you and says, we're really most interested in you going virtual and virtual only, are you going to tell them no? Because they see maybe better sponsorship or marketing opportunities due to that. These are the types of discussions that can be extremely helpful. So, my event this year, we lost our primary sponsor. Our primary sponsor was $25,000. So we went from $30,000 in sponsorship to $500. But that's primarily because their number one sponsor walked away from the event. So, and they didn't really have a discussion with us. They just didn't get back to us. So I definitely would encourage you to make sure that sponsor or your primary sponsor or all of your sponsors can be part of the conversation, because they can potentially give you some good guidance or even offer support. So this is what I was mentioning on the previous slide is, would they be willing to support a fully virtual event, especially if you're laying out the different plans and you're making sure that you can actually explain to them, how you're going to do activation for them. Virtual may mean for certain types of companies better activation, and if the sponsor has a physical good that they want, you need to have that conversation early, because then you can get that to your fulfillment company, or if you're doing the fulfillment yourself, you can then ship those that physical good to the participant as part of their sponsorship, because if they're not getting that, they're going to be kind of upset with that. So some of these other questions would be, going back to the A plan, the B plan, and the C plan, is how would they feel if the event has to go virtual at some later date, or it is in person? These types of questions, if you're asked, will create that clarity for you to make good decisions. So if you're having the discussion with sponsorship, I think everyone here would be absolutely willing to, offer lower financial commitments to support the event. So, be sensitive to that. I think that a lot of businesses want to do something, especially if your event is a nonprofit. You just need to maybe say, hey, is there metrics that we need to share with you to prove to you that this is a successful campaign for you and your team? So our virtual strategy. What we want to look at is, and I want to focus in here specifically on turkey trots. I think you can apply this to any fall event, is that, with turkey trots, I feel extremely confident that if some turkey trots have to go virtual, I feel very confident that the numbers are going to be good. And the reason is that Thanksgiving, for whatever reason, over the past 20 years has become the #1 running day. And there is some reason to that. One is that, most people have the day off, so they've already kind of got time. They're going to do something unhealthy later that day and eat a lot of food. And they've also built a tradition of running. Hopefully they're at least simming together as a family. And this is a way for, if they cannot be together, that you can point out that they can still be together as a family, is that everybody kind of goes and runs at the same time. You also need to make sure that you're pointing out, that runners who have participated for 5, 10, 20 years, we actually have multiple turkey trots on our platform that are over 100 years old. And so this year they're going to do their turkey trot, even if that means they can only have 5 people in person and the rest are virtual, because they don't want to give up. I think the YMCA turkey trot of Buffalo is 143 or 144 years. So that type of tradition and people who have done it year after year, that needs to be part of your marketing. That needs to be part of your overall message, is that, hey, you've been with us this many years, please don't miss a year. Because again, a lot of turkey trots support a lot of great causes. So let's not let that get lost in the messaging just because it's gone virtual, that somehow it's not as good. The reason people do this is because they want to, be part of their community, and they want to support a local nonprofit. So again, highlight that in the marketing. You know, from a community standpoint, make sure you're featuring local sponsors that residents want to see continue. So a lot of turkey trots are sponsored by local companies. Again, local nonprofit, local companies sponsoring it. So, you know, you can then kind of collaborate with your sponsors to show them that we're going to actually make little commercials with you. There's lots of little things that you can do by recording videos and then dropping those to participants during the week leading up to it, as well as on Thanksgiving Day, so that people can, you know, support these sponsors that are supporting a great event. Another way that is kind of unique that not a ton of people have done yet is if you work with a certified timer and you offer Race Joy Anywhere, which would allow someone to actually go out and run a virtual race wherever they are in the world and then submit their time, you can actually do audio cheer points and waypoints and then kind of have sponsors be activated by doing that. Now you can go like way too far with this. Like if you have one like every quarter mile, like that would be extremely obnoxious. But you know, if your primary sponsor is supporting you in some shape or fashion that you feel very meaningful, this is a way that you could kind of say, hey, at the halfway point, we're going to highlight you. We're going to have banner ads for you inside of Race Joy. We're going to put you on the digital bib. We're going to put you on the finisher certificate to try to put them as many places as possible. And then finally is the cause. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but a lot of charities right now are in need. So right now, from we're seeing a certain group of charities doing really well, and then other nonprofits are just not, you know, their revenue is completely drying up. In the past month, I've talked to probably 5 different people that work for nonprofits that have been laid off. And I'm sure I'm under counting that. I just haven't even, maybe I can even get in contact with some of the other people. So charities really rely on annual fundraisers, and specifically turkey trots, or just larger fall events in general, to meet, you know, meaningful revenue goals. And so doing a virtual event is extremely important this year to get dollars in the door. And my pitch to people is this can't be a zero. We can't have a zero for the year for you. So what can we do to get that to be not a zero? And most of the time that can be, you know, significantly better than that. So if we're looking at how can you highlight your event, because many of the events are going to be either a little bit of in-person and virtual, or virtual only, or limited number of participants. So let's talk about things that you can start to highlight to say, hey, this is actually different, but in a good way. So, you know, how many states do you have runners from? And turkey trots actually in general always have a lot of different states represented. It's not uncommon for a turkey trot to have, you know, 25, 30 different states represented because people are traveling home. I'm not really sure how that's going to look this year. Again, the 8-ball hasn't given the answer on that. But some of the other, these are some different ideas that we have that you could highlight. So what family has the most generations participating? Are there groups creating matching outfits? Are there local running clubs using the race to connect remotely? Can spectators watch and cheer from home via apps or using Facebook Live and things like that? How does the flexibility make it easier for people to participate? And that's actually one of the things that really hammer home, especially for turkey trots, is that I have an opinion, and I think it's going to get proven out, is let's say you're from, let's use the Buffalo turkey trot again. And let's say you now live in Kansas City. You've moved away from Buffalo. You normally go home to Buffalo to visit with family, and you normally do the turkey trot. Well, this year you're not coming. So there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with not coming home for Thanksgiving. We need to make sure that we recognize that. But we can be part of this by saying, hey, you can get part of Buffalo by being part of the Buffalo turkey trot, even if you're in Kansas City. So that is something that's going to be very impactful to people. It's like, hey, I usually go home, and this year you're not, but you can still be part of your favorite race and part of your favorite turkey trot that supports a good nonprofit. You also will find is that at least some races we are finding are growing just because the logistics of the actual race inhibited people from participating, meaning that, like, if you live far outside of town or outside of the city and you come into town, sometimes coming into town is a pain. It's like, oh, I got up at 4:30 in the morning to go to this race. You may find more people participating in your race because it's logistically very easy for them to get up, put their shoes on, grab their phone, and go out and run. We have some major brands coming on board this summer doing some virtual campaigns. The one that I'm most intrigued with, and we'll definitely share how it goes, is we have the Gritty 5K, which is Gritty is the creepy mascot for the Philadelphia Flyers. If you haven't seen Gritty before, don't Google it without being scared. Gritty is an absolutely terrifying character. But their race has been an in-person race with 2,000 to 3,000 people, roughly, and it's at the Navy Pier in downtown Philly. This year, I think they're going to do significantly better. Now, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that Gritty branded gear is going to do really, really well because it's just something people are into. So that's something to think about too. Is like, how can you make your swag, cool and stuff that people want to buy, and especially if you're associated with a brand, you may have a big advantage. The last one I wanted to point out is, and this may be part of your race day experience, is using social media contests to enhance the experience. So I've encouraged larger races. I'm not saying every race needs to do this, to set up either YouTube Live or Facebook Live to let people be able to watch. If you're a spectator or a participant, essentially you want to use the window before the parade starts for turkey trots in particular to kind of do a lightweight TV show. So you can highlight Instagram posts, you can highlight pictures that families have posted of them doing the race, and just over the course of an hour, as people start finishing, and you can highlight results and things like that. You can make it something that somebody can easily pop onto their TV or watch on their phone and enjoy. And then you can call out people saying, hey, we're going to put a poll out for our best photo. And then people can poll on the photo, and then that person wins a gift certificate to a local restaurant or something like that. So using these tools to create engagement is an important part of this process. Oh yeah, I can't see all my slides. So yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about, is hit the big screen. So if you think this is impossible, this is actually super easy. It's literally your phone right here, phone. That's all you need in order to be able to do a lot of these things. And talk to even your participants to ask if someone has experience doing this, and get practice, doing this before your event, so that you could do a Facebook Live or YouTube Live or an Instagram Live, whatever you think is best for your group. Also, make sure to contact local TV or radio for support. Is that they are looking for good content, and if you really do a good job of promoting the event, and you get multi-thousand person, you might be able to get some support or promotion from them at no charge. So this is what I was mentioning previously, is highlighting runners and sponsors and charities to support them in this live TV type program. And also make sure that you're continually communicating the local impact of the event. If any of you guys remember telethons, how long into the telethon was it before they're like, oh, we've got $14,000 raised? Make sure that you're, really drilling home the amount of money and what that money does. For some nonprofits, this is very hard to do. It's like, but with food-based charities, it's like, hey, for every dollar it feeds, a person for 3 days or whatever the ratio is. Those types of things are great to highlight. So some of the things, if you do have sponsors, and one of the things I didn't mention about sponsors earlier is that if you have sponsors that you really, really enjoy working with, but this year they can't support you, I have had many races that have kept on a few sponsors, even though they can't make contributions. So that's something to think about and discuss with other members of your board or race committee. Is that may go a long way to the sustainability of the race in the future. So inside of the RunSignup system, if you turn on sponsors and add your sponsors. You can have, set up different sponsorship levels. We track the number of views that you get. We include them in your confirmation email, as well as if you use our email platform, they're automatically added to all participants and marketing communications. And then finally, we do offer sponsor offers, which allows you to plug in a specific offer from each sponsor that you're allowing to do this. And so this works like a lightweight virtual goodie bag. So this isn't necessarily like a replacement for a virtual race bag or something like that, but this is free, and this is something you can configure yourself. And it's something that sponsors will appreciate if you can, try to help drive sales for them. Okay, so sponsor options for virtual races. I think swag is probably one of the better ways to do it. So we're showing here a buff. So we're actually doing, for those of you that decided to opt in, we're actually doing a custom branded buff that we're working with to get that fulfilled. You also can have watermarks if you offer photos. And just a reminder, we are coming out with participant uploaded photos. So if participants take a picture of themselves and submit their photo, they would actually have a photo tied to their result. And that if they then go to look at that photo, or a friend goes to look at that photo, you can actually pick a particular sponsor to put on there. And that's all at no charge. And so the other thing is that you can set up sponsorship through the promotion of participation. So you can offer digital rewards, such as a website and email views, and in exchange for a set number of registrations to their network rather than upfront cash. And essentially what that means is like, hey, if they promote the event, that's a different way for them to be part of the event. So if they promote out to their Facebook group or email list, they promote your event. So sponsorship and RaceJoy. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. You can actually have in-app banner ads. So Fidelity Bank, that's highlighted at the bottom of the app. You can also have sponsored progress alerts. So it says, updates provided by Sky Running Shoes. You can also make that audio. So when someone's, getting to a point in the race, they can get an audio update that's brought to you by a particular sponsor. And then also custom cheers is what I was mentioning. And then finally, you can do local places of interest. So if you can highlight, it looks like they're highlighting the airport, the brewery, and restaurant food. And these are all things that are close to the race. So a plan for swag. So swag is one of the hardest parts of this situation, is that, if you offer no swag, people aren't going to sign up. But it is very logistically challenging, especially with, parts of the country, quote unquote, opened up. It's yeah, this is the part that I find the most challenging personally. So let's say you have a partner who typically where you do packet pickup. You need to have a discussion with them. Do they want to have packet pickup at their place of business? Can they handle that? I've actually had, some car dealerships that, they're doing a lot of tent specials and stuff like that. So they might need prime candidates to be able to do a packet pickup. Now, the issue with local pickup is that if you have people out of town, they can't participate with that. So now you've created a situation where some percentage of people are picking up locally, which means there's no real additional cost. There are additional precautions and work that needs to be done. But you have, another percentage of people that you have to then put into a queue for logistically shipping them stuff, and they've got to pay extra. So typically during registration process, you're going to have to sort out, like, I'm doing local pickup or I'm wanting it shipped. We also can allow participants, if you wanted to do this, to be able to go in and make a change. I want my stuff shipped now, right? The other is shipping for everybody. This is logistically probably the simplest because it's a machine process at that point, right? You get the stuff, you get it, you work with a third-party fulfillment company, and you ship it all out. That doesn't mean that it's all going to work perfectly, because some people are going to give you bad addresses. Some people are going to be, that address is no good anymore, et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff is going to happen. So this part is, you can see the headers here: local pickup, shipping for all, and half and half. Make sure you discuss these in detail and understand the impact of each one. there is no right answer on this, because if your primary sponsor is where you do packet pickup, they obviously see that as a valuable part of their part of the event. So you need to make sure you have a discussion with them, because they may say, actually, we're really not that interested in having packet pickup. So shipping considerations. So it says shipping is hard. That is absolutely true. So here's some of the examples of things. If you haven't done this yet, wait. In the continental United States, and I'm specifically saying continental United States, that is not Alaska, and that is not Hawaii, that is not Puerto Rico, that is not U.S. Virgin Islands, you're looking at $3 to $5. But that, if you do something that weighs over 13 ounces, you get into significant price changes. The shape of the items. So if you do a funky giveaway of some kind, or funky metal, it may not fit in something like cellophane bags. That's the beauty of just doing T-shirts, is cellophane bags are, real easy to ship out. So, you also have zones where you're using shipping software to automatically calculate the shipping zones and subsequent costs. RunSignup is going to be adding in the near future the ability to set different shipping rates by state or international. But you're going to have to set that. We're not actually setting that, because we don't really know what you're shipping or what it costs. We are going to try to look at doing an integration with like a third-party shipping software once we get this additional stuff done. We also do, depending on your event, I would consider potentially blocking or discouraging international participants, because it can ruin a month of your time just trying to figure out how you're going to get things to certain countries. And it can be like, it can easily be $100 to ship to some countries. So we're going to kind of continue on. This is why we highly recommend, looking at a fulfillment company. So if you're not sure about a fulfillment company, talk to your timer. Your timer may have that part of their business model, or they may have been in the industry for 20 years, and they can, help you find a fulfillment partner and help you manage that, because this is not something to, take lightly. It's a lot of work, and you can waste a tremendous amount of money if you do it wrong. If you're not sure where to go, you don't have a timer, runsignup.com/go virtual. We have some fulfillment companies listed there that they can take, and basically what many of these companies are doing is they're managing the ordering and the shipping. So they do need access to your RunSignup page in order to manage that, or you do need to give them a list every so often of who's ordered what. So communication. The thing that we have learned quite a bit is that participants want to know when they're going to get their stuff. We are competing with Amazon now. Whether we like it or not, Amazon does a tremendous job of communicating, and virtually any other large company is doing a great job communicating when you're going to get your item. So put in your giveaway description, this is something we added, and I mentioned on my quick hits, is put in when the items should be shipped. And if your fulfillment partner can provide tracking IDs, and then you can find a way to send an email, or your fulfillment partner sends an email out that explains that, that's really important. The same thing with add-ons. So add-ons would be like, these are things that are not necessarily included in the cost of registration. Make sure you're communicating when those items are going to be shipped. All right. Oh yeah, so it says you can find me at username at mail.me. That's me. That's my email address. Actually, my email is brian@runsignup.com. So we missed that one, Johanna. I didn't notice that one. So I'm guessing, Johanna, we have some questions to go through, and we can start doing that.
Yeah, we have a little bit. There's a lot that people have been answering among themselves. Do you have any examples of some of the types of fees that you might want to add, that you could use to add fees to registration that wouldn't make people would understand?
What do you think they mean by that question, Johanna? I'm not fully understanding.
So if you're adding an extra fee, like things like shipping or, a small field fee, or like ways in which you could make the fee, an added fee, explainable and understandable for people going through the process?
Yeah, so there's different strategies for this. Some races are bundling a lot of fees into it, so it's it's $35, and that includes everything. Our large high volume virtual races are charging extra fees for shipping. So I think line item it, when you go through the registration process and you make your selections, we're seeing tons of people, understanding that shipping is just the cost of things now. I don't think that people even really, I'm not going to say they don't notice it, but they have an understanding that there's going to be a cost if they select they want the item shipped. So I haven't heard a ton of negative feedback on that because I think people truly like getting. I just got my shirt for a virtual race that I signed up for, and I was happy. I was like, it just came to me. I didn't even have to go anywhere. So I do think one of the fallouts of this is that there will be participants who will want to skip the line and just get their stuff sent, even for live races.
Here is a kind of creative one. If there is a way to do state and location discounts, this is similarly to how team size discounts work, where your state, if you get the state with the most registrations, that state can everyone from that state is automatically discounted.
The only way you could do that is if you created every single state as a team. So we can't do geographic-based discounting.
For live sessions, either Facebook or Instagram, is that accessible then for people who live outside the US?
Absolutely, yeah. So as long as they live in a country that Facebook or YouTube is not blocked, then yeah, they can watch it.
And I actually think the majority of the rest of our questions are all about shipping, and have been answered. Now they've been answered far better by by other users in here than I think that we're going to do. Here I have.
So we want to give people the opportunity to submit a few more questions.
Yeah. Not specific to turkey trots, but with events that are focused on the experience offered by the venue, how can we entice participants to do the event as a virtual rather than request a refund or a deferral? Things that are unique about the venue, stuff like a brewery run or an airport run or stuff where the destination is really important.
So for some of those, it is very challenging. When I've had extended discussions with people, one of the most interesting things that I'm finding is that if I were to give you two options, I think everybody would take the one option, and I think the other option is actually the better. Is that if you have, let's say, a brewery run, what we're finding is that if you open registration for the brewery run right now and say it's going to be in person, and then you find out 3 weeks from now you're not allowed to do the event, and then you go virtual, what we generally find is that the registrations really tail off. If that same brewery run launched a separate campaign with a different name and a different brand, but same company, exclusively as a virtual run, it does a lot better. So what I'm finding is that the existing race, the live race, is actually somewhat of a burden sometimes from a marketing standpoint. And I've thought about it a lot as to why that would be the case. And it's essentially, it's the expectation that we all have of whatever your favorite race that you go to is as a person. You go there and you enjoy the experience, you enjoy the race, you enjoy the spectators. And then they say, oh, well, we can't provide that to you and we're going virtual. That's where all the negativity comes. Whereas if you create a brand new campaign and you're doing unique stuff that maybe you couldn't do with the live race because the virtual race gives you more latitude, and also if you charge a reasonable rate, you can do quite a bit of swag. All of a sudden, someone's perception of it, because they signed up for a virtual race right from the get-go is much, much better. That's one of the more confusing things that I've learned in this process, and I think it's a very true statement. The numbers just bear out. Like 90% of our registrations are coming from campaigns started after March 15th. So that tells you that would not be the normal case for RunSignup. Most of our business comes from, existing races who have worked with us previously. So I don't know if that's helpful to people in terms of like, hey, if I'm going virtual with like an airport race or something like that, my suggestion would be is if I were that type of race, I would actually start a brand new race that is got maybe the airport theme, but is not saying, hey, this race is going virtual. Specifically because of the connotations and the expectations that come from if I've ran on the runway of a race, and this year you're saying go and run in your neighborhood or wherever you want to run, I'm not going to be as happy about that. Whereas if it's an airport themed gear and stuff like that, and it's a separate type of event, you might do better.
Anyone else got anything for Brian while we have him tied down here? If it's a nonprofit doing a new virtual event like you explained, should we still say that it's for our charity?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that one of the things that we are definitely learning right now is that we have a number of, I don't know if everybody knows this, but we last month we averaged 62 new races a day, 7 days a week. So we've been extremely busy. And it's not like every single race is getting 5,000 people or something like that. A lot of them are getting 100, 200, 300 people, stuff like that. But we are seeing a lot of new nonprofits coming to us and putting on virtual races with varying success. And what we aren't seeing, and this has been a struggle for all of us, is we are not seeing many nonprofits for this fall committing to races they've had in the past. So if you're a nonprofit who hasn't put on a race, and your first race is going to be a virtual race, you might actually be at a little bit of an advantage because, again, that nonprofit that's put on the race for the past 15 years, we can't get in touch with them. We're trying to get in touch with them to find out, hey, what do you guys want to do with your race? And a lot of them are kind of saying, well, nothing, or we'll wait till next month to make a decision.
Brian, can you clarify a little bit? There's a couple people asking about this. When you talk about the type of race, we talked a lot about continuity and keeping your race going for this versus the recommendation to have like an airport race start from scratch. Can you kind of clarify what scenarios you think it's best to maintain your brand and where it makes sense to break from the brand for this year?
Yeah, so maintaining your brand would be a turkey trot. So if your race, or if your race has anything that's similar to a turkey trot, where it's been around for a long time, and or you're a race that has an extremely strong brand, then I think it's a great idea to keep going with it. Where it gets more muddled, like to give you like a prime example is today, unfortunately, the New York City Marathon just announced they're canceling. We could take a poll right now. How many people think that the New York City Marathon would be better in person or virtual? And I'm pretty sure it would be universally in person by far, right? All of us. Even if we had to walk the thing, right? It's just a tremendous experience to have the streets of New York City closed just for you to go walk around, run around, So those races are the races sometimes. So if your race is tied to the experience of running a half marathon, a marathon, a 10K, I find those races to have a much tougher time going virtual. The interesting thing, though, to counterpoint my own self, is that people will sign up for the New York City virtual race. So let's say I am never going to make it to New York City, but if I could sign up for the New York City Marathon and run a marathon and get the New York City medal, I might do that, right? Same thing with Boston. But I'm not sure they would do that because of the strength of their brand, right? Like, why would I cheapen my brand to let, Brian Jenkins, pretend to do my marathon, right? So what I think is important to have a discussion about is like, hey, what do we think is going to happen in terms of response to, if you're going to go virtual, my recommendation is go virtual from the start. If you have to go live for 2-3 months and then you have to pull the plug and go virtual, that is extremely hard to do successfully. If you look at go look at the Facebook pages of spring events if you want to find out what that's like. It's not pleasant. So these decisions, I don't want anybody to take them lightly, like what they're doing or what they're not doing, but it's extremely strange to me how many net new campaigns that we're working with that are getting multi-thousand people that did not exist 90 days ago. And the only thing that I can, apply to that is to say, hey, this race does not have the baggage of 15 years of being a wonderful half marathon, and people expect spectators and the beer garden and all the other things that come with a great race. And that's really, really hard to overcome. So if you are that type of race, you have to figure out, well, how much of that experience can we provide to have a really, really good virtual race, right? And I'm not sure how to answer that beyond just like saying, like, you need to have a good brainstorming session on, again, the classic example would be a half marathon that has great swag, great spectators, and a beer garden afterwards. That race is extremely hard to go virtual.
Here's a question about a wait list or an option to allow people to register without charging them yet, so that people can start registering for the event and then only get charged if the event moves forward.
So we have that capability through our lottery, but you have to be approved by RunSignup. Essentially, you need to have pretty deep pockets to be able to do something like that, because you're going to pay for marketing. You may even pay for a venue. You may pay staff, and then it turns out you can't have the event. So RunSignup needs to make sure that, if we were to unlock that for you to do that, that you have the reserves to be able to carry for 2 or 3 months, marketing and staff and all the other things that would come with doing something like that. Because essentially you're getting zero money until we actually run the credit cards, right? So we do have a few customers that are going to do that in August for September events. So it's not something we can't do. We're just not actively marketing it, because most events, if I came to you and said, oh, by the way, yeah, you're not going to see a dime for 90 days, and you're going to be building out this event that entire time, a lot of people aren't going to be super happy with that.
We're a beneficiary of a 3,000 person Thanksgiving turkey trot, and the venue has already said no races for 2020. How should we move forward then?
So if I was a 3,000 person turkey trot, I would be getting prepared, getting my virtual plan put together. I would be having discussions with whoever my primary vendors are for, t-shirts, medals, my timer. I would be putting a brain trust together on saying, how can we make our turkey trot virtual? And I think with this much time and this much planning, roughly I would be planning to launch registration the Tuesday after Labor Day. You could open a little earlier than that, but I think that's plenty of time to fully execute a plan of what does our marketing look like, what does our fulfillment and shipping look like, what does our sponsorship outlook look like, and then also, if you're going to take my idea of potentially doing like a TV show, or something lightweight that is just fun and interactive, and getting that all planned out, that's exactly what I would be doing right now to get prepared for that, because I truly believe that turkey trots, if done, have to go virtual, will do well. If you message out, how this supports the community, if you message out this is a nonprofit that it's benefiting, if you message about, how, getting together as a family is going to be super important this year, all these things that we've highlighted in this presentation about, some of the traditions and community support, I feel like those things are going to go over extremely well with your customers.
Great. Anyone else got a last minute? I think that looks like it for now. One quick note, before people sign off today, there is one session left today from 4 to 4:30. It is just a virtual race setup for the race tomorrow morning. If you are super familiar with RaceJoy, you don't necessarily have to attend, but they're going to walk through how to get the app prepared, how to use it, so that you can use it tomorrow and actually really engage with people throughout, whether you're out running or if you want to stay home, sit on your couch and send cheers to people and see how the interaction works. They're just going to get you guys set up so that you can take advantage of that tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for participating. And definitely, if you haven't tried RaceJoy, do it tomorrow morning. It's not too tough to do. Thank you guys. See ya.
Thanks.